Just a couple weeks ago, it looked like the tight end position had turned the corner. We were on our way to having like 10 guys a week score 10 fantasy points. That was short-lived, and now we have bye weeks where we're not going to have studs like Cade Otton or Trey McBride. So like we've been doing with tight ends all year long, let's fill some holes. Wait. That's right, today we're talking about our top 15 tight ends for week 11 fantasy football. Now before we dive into the rankings, we always talk about the bigger hits and misses from the previous week at the tight end position. But this position absolutely sucks right now. Only 6 tight ends scored at least 10 fantasy points last week, and you only needed 7.8 points to finish inside the top 12 at the position. Could I sit here and say, hey, you know what? I hit on George Kittle. I hit on Travis Kelce. Sure, I could. But obviously, you were going to be starting them no matter what I said last week. We're really back to the days where the tight end position has like 4 or 5 guys that you know you're going to start every week. And then after that, you're just throwing blind darts. So let's go ahead and bring up the rankings here for week 11 and try to find the top 15 tight ends for this week. And let's start right here in tier 1 where we have Travis Kelce, George Kittle, Brock Bowers, Mark Andrews, TJ Hawkinson, and David Njoku. Now for Travis Kelce, he's going up against Buffalo and he's still being fed weekly. He now has 40 targets, 32 receptions, 254 yards, and 2 touchdowns over his last 3 games played. Now it does sound like Juju Smith-Schuster has a chance to come back this week, and this is a much better matchup for DeAndre Hopkins, who was covered by Patrick Surtain last week. But with the volume we've seen going the way of Travis Kelce here as of late, even if he sees a slight dip in volume, it's still enough to put him right here at the top of the rankings. Then we got George Kittle going up against Seattle. He's the current tight end 1 overall, but he's benefiting more from touchdowns than he is volume, like Travis Kelce. Now George Kittle has 7 touchdowns over his last 7 games. Kittle actually found the end zone 2 times in their last matchup against Seattle just a couple weeks back. The Seahawks allow over 10 fantasy points per game to the tight end position, so George Kittle right here at number 2. Then we got Brock Bowers. He's coming off the bye week. He's going up against the Miami Dolphins. And I really look at Brock Bowers as kind of middle of the line between George Kittle and Travis Kelce. He doesn't get the volume of Kelce or the touchdowns of Kittle, but he's one of only 3 tight ends that are averaging over 10 fantasy points per game right now on the season. Not the greatest of matchups. Miami allows the 8th fewest fantasy points per game to the tight end position, but we know we get Gardner Minshew back under center, so Brock Bowers is right here at number 3. At 4, this is where we go Mark Andrews going up against Pittsburgh. The TDs keep on coming, and that's keeping him more fantasy relevant. The volume is up and down, but the red zone looks are there almost weekly. He's had 5 touchdowns over his last 5 games, and the tight end position has found decent success against the Pittsburgh defense here this season. Now after Andrews, we go down to TJ Hawkinson going up against Tennessee. 9 targets in his second game back is exactly what we want to see. He then turned it into 11 fantasy points. It's easy enough for us to say at this point that this guy is going to be a Verge top 5 tight end rest of season. We just need Sam Darnold to snap out of whatever the hell that was in week 10, and we should be good to go. Got TJ Hawkinson at number 5. Then we go down to David Njoku coming off the bye week going up against the New Orleans Saints, and he's really benefited from Jameis Winston being under center and Amari Cooper no longer being in Cleveland. However, he's still a little bit more boom or bust. Only has 1 game this year with over 5 receptions. He's really reliant on that big play or a touchdown, a little bit more so than the 5 guys ahead of him. Now going up against New Orleans, they're middle of the pack against opposing tight ends, so I got David Njoku at number 6, the bottom of tier 1. Now after tier 1, we go down to tier 2, and this is where I got Kyle Pitts, Tucker Kraft, Evan Ingram, and Taysom Hill. For Kyle Pitts, he's going up against Denver, and we know he isn't ever going to be considered a quote-unquote safe start, but we do need to take advantage of matchups like this. The best way to attack Denver is through the air and at the tight end position. With Drake London dealing with Patrick Surtain, we could see a whole lot of Kyle Pitts in week 11, just like we saw a whole lot of Travis Kelce in week 10. Then we go down to Tucker Kraft going up against Chicago, coming off the bye week, and the Green Bay offense is finally fully healthy. Now it's going to make it hard for him to rack up consistent targets, but Chicago does allow over 9 fantasy points per game to the tight end position. Now that's 13th most in the NFL, and out of all the position groups, running back, wide receiver, and tight ends, it's the most successful position group against this defense, so Tucker Kraft's at number 8. Number 9 is Evan Ingram going up against Detroit, and as much as I would like to say that Mac Jones killed the value of Evan Ingram, He really didn't. He got similar production with Mac Jones that he normally did with Trevor Lawrence. He's a safe floor play, and he's going to get you right around 6 to 9 fantasy points a week, but touchdowns are going to be hard to come by in this offense. Now, they probably will be losing and trailing Detroit, which is going to force them to throw the ball all 4 quarters. That's why he remains inside the top 10 at number 9. And then I got Taysom Hill at number 10 to round out tier 2 going up against Cleveland. Same old story with Taysom Hill. Totally boom or bust, but his matchup winning when he booms. Last week, should have been one of those booms. He had an 80-yard touchdown that was called back by holding. Now, it is what it is, but New Orleans needs weapons on offense. Outside of Alvin Kamara and maybe MVS now, Taysom Hill is next on the list. He's getting carries, he's getting targets, so he's up inside the top 10. So now that only leaves us tier 3, where I have Dallas Goedert, Zach Ertz, Jake Ferguson, Will Dissly, and Jonnu Smith. For Dallas Goedert, he's going up against Washington, and he's really going to need to find the end zone to be fantasy relevant. Him and Devontae Smith are technically still questionable to play, but with so many weapons on the offense here in Philadelphia, it's really hard to count on Dallas Goedert to really outperform being a low-end tight end 1 at best. Really, the best thing we can root for here is just a shootout between Philadelphia and Washington. Now, at number 12 is his opponent in that game, Zach Ertz, going up against Philadelphia. Is this still considered a revenge game? I mean, he hasn't played for Philadelphia since 2021. Either way, though, he's still seeing fairly consistent volume. He's had 8+ targets in 2 of his last 3 games played. And we all know that Washington is going to have to attack Philadelphia through the air. They're a lot easier to throw on than they are to run on, but no team allows fewer fantasy points to the tight end position than the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, because of that, that's why I've dropped him down inside tier 3. Then we got Jake Ferguson going up against Houston. And obviously with Cooper Rush at quarterback, it's really going to hurt Jake Ferguson, but between the Dallas running game and the Houston run defense, Dallas is going to have to throw the ball in this game if they even want to keep the game competitive. Now, the touchdown chances may diminish overall in Dallas, but we need to pray for volume as of right now going the way of Jake Ferguson. Otherwise, he may turn into an irrelevant piece in fantasy football. Then we got Will Dissly going up against Cincinnati. Same kind of thing for Dissly can be said here. Not a lot of big plays or touchdown opportunities, but the volume is there. 6+ targets now in 3 of his last 4 games played, and the Cincinnati Bengals, they allow the 4th most fantasy points per game to the tight end position, and then we round out tier 3 with Jonnu Smith of the Miami Dolphins going up against Las Vegas. Really, the only reason he squeaked in here at the end was due to the injury to Tyreek Hill and this matchup going up against the Raiders. The Raiders allow the 5th most fantasy points per game to the tight end position, and Jonnu Smith has had at least 6+ targets in 4 of his last 5 games played. With Tyreek Hill not 100% and Jalen Waddle kind of disappearing at times, we're hoping that Jonnu Smith can get similar targets here in week 11. So that will go ahead and get us through the top 15 tight ends here for week 11 fantasy football. Now, if you're missing a Cade Otton or a Trey McBride this week, hopefully you can find somebody here in these rankings to fill that hole. Now, if you enjoyed today's show, do me a favor by hitting the like button and consider subscribing if you haven't already. I'm going to go ahead and get out of here for the day, but hopefully you enjoy the rest of your day, and then most importantly, do your part to make the world a better place.
Analytics off the chain.